They say you always remember the heat. That's what hits me first when I think back to August 2002, standing in the server room with no AC, cables snaking across the floor, a box fan doing absolutely nothing. The drywall was half exposed, the ceiling tiles water-stained, and I was on my knees trying to get the router to stop kicking every 15 minutes. No one said thank you back then. They just wanted the emails to work. I was 29. Hungry. Focused. First one in. Last one out. And now, I'm sitting in a temperature-controlled boardroom overlooking downtown Chicago, across from a girl who wasn't even born when I set up the network she's currently trying to dismantle. My name is Raymond Locke. I'm 52 years old. Until this morning, I was director of operations at Carlton and Rowe Interactive, a boutique media tech hybrid that built its reputation on client trust and bulletproof execution. For 23 years, I was the guy who knew where every digital skeleton was buried, and more importantly, where the keys to every locked door were kept. From pitch decks to server outages, from broken contracts to international client retention, I kept the whole machine running like a Rolex. And today, apparently, I'm a FAX. That's what Madison Lee Carlton just called me. She said it with a soft, rehearsed smile. The kind of smile a sorority president might give a janitor she's firing for being off-brand. You're like, a FAX, Ray. Legacy. Not really. Compatible with where we're going. I stared at her from across the polished oak table, the same table where her father and I once sat cross-legged after hours eating Chinese takeout while troubleshooting a database collapse in 2009. Her chair used to be his. His nameplate is still faintly outlined in the wood. I'm sorry, what exactly do you mean by that? I asked, evenly. Not angry. Not yet. She tucked a strand of platinum blonde hair behind her ear and gestured vaguely with her lacquered nails. We're pivoting. Gen Z alignment, short-form content, gamified community engagement, AI influencer packages, like the whole works. And I'm not aligned. She giggled. Actually giggled. You've been incredible, obviously. My dad always spoke so highly of you. But optics are huge now. Vibes are currency, and we're bringing in someone with a fresher take. Optics. I repeated. She nodded. You've got that older man steering the ship energy. But we need more of a chaotic captain vibe, like think pirate but with a ring light. A man I didn't recognize was standing outside the glass door. Black turtleneck, silver rings, jawline sharp enough to cut vinyl. I'd seen his type on the agency decks we used to laugh at. And him? I asked, nodding toward the figure. Sterling's our new brand ecosystem advisor. He specializes in digital native environments and culture hacking. He's going to make sure we're not just participating in trends but setting them. I almost laughed. Instead, I looked back at Madison. She had her feet up on the corner of the table now, polished boots tapping silently against the edge, the kind of casual posture you wear when you think you're untouchable. No transition plan? I asked. No documentation transfer? You expect him to just inherit the entire operational infrastructure cold? We'll figure it out. Her smile widened. We're very agile. And if something breaks, we'll pivot. I leaned back in my chair. The silence between us was thick. She didn't fill it. She thought she'd won. Then she added, as if it were an afterthought, you can clear your desk today. HR already revoked your access credentials. My stomach didn't drop. My chest didn't tighten. All I felt was stillness. Security will escort you out if necessary, she added with a smirk, then stood and straightened her blazer. No, hard feelings, Ray. It's just evolution. I didn't reply. I just stood slowly, smoothed my shirt, and walked to the door. As I stepped out into the hallway, I saw Sterling slap a high five with one of the junior associates. He winked at me as I passed. I walked straight to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. Behind me, the company I helped build began its slow death spiral. They just didn't know it yet. I didn't speak for the first 24 hours. No angry emails, no ranting to friends or ex-colleagues, no social media venting, just silence. I sat at my kitchen table that night, lights off, laptop closed, staring out the window while the city buzzed around me. Across the street, someone was laughing on a rooftop. It felt like another planet. The next morning, I woke early out of habit, showered, shaved, dressed in slacks and a button-up like I was going somewhere. But I wasn't. I poured my coffee black and drank it standing. At 8:17 a.m., I walked out the door and drove downtown, not to go in. Just to see. Carlton and Rose Glass Towers shimmered like nothing had changed. The LED signage still rotated through client logos and thought leader quotes, with all the soulless enthusiasm of a company that believed its own pitch decks. I parked across the street and sat in my car, watching through the tinted windshield. Inside the fourth-floor boardroom, I saw them. Madison, Sterling, 3 new hires in ironic hoodies hunched over a conference table, trying to get the hybrid live stream equipment working. One held a mic like it might bite him. The image on the mounted screen stuttered, grainy, lagging, out of sync. Audio cut in and out as one of the clients started speaking, only for her voice to dissolve into robotic distortion. I built that setup myself. Every wire, every node, labeled, logged, tested. The equipment wasn't broken. The people using it were. They didn't know the broadcast system needed a manual switch override to stabilize bitrate on cloud sync. They didn't know the audio board needed 2 firmware patches to stay compatible with Zoom and WebEx. They didn't know where the redundancy logs were stored in case of signal failure, because they hadn't asked. I sat there, watching their hands wave in frustration, mouths moving in silent panic. My face didn't change. But inside, something settled. I'd always told myself I wasn't irreplaceable, that no one is. But watching them twist in the wind, scrambling while a multi-million-dollar client waited, did something to me. Not satisfaction. Just clarity. They erased me so quickly, so completely. But ghosts don't scream. They observe. They remember. That afternoon, I opened my personal archive. I hadn't touched it in years. Old project folders, system blueprints, vendor contacts, private notes, Slack exports, meeting recordings. Half of it should have been deleted per HR protocol. But legacy access is a funny thing, especially when you're the guy who built the bridge everyone else forgot they were standing on. I didn't hack anything, didn't break policy. I simply retrieved what belonged to me. Notes from a 2017 cross-platform migration, where I personally handled 3 panicked VPs who didn't know a firewall from a spreadsheet. Documentation of vendor price locks I negotiated by handshakes and late-night dinners. Slack threads where I trained interns on client etiquette. Memos proving I warned about overextending our brand resources 3 times before they fell apart. Sterling didn't have any of this. Madison wouldn't even know where to look. I started sorting, printing, highlighting. Not for revenge, for preservation. The truth, frozen in time. Proof that I had mattered. That what I did wasn't just noise. That I wasn't a fax. At 6:04 p.m., I received a notification. A client I'd personally handled for 7 years posted a LinkedIn update pulling their contract. Time to realign with partners who understand. Execution. No names, no shade. But I knew. They'd been there during the glitchy live stream. I'd recognized the COO's face, frozen mid-sentence as the screen went black. By day's end, 2 more clients had gone dark. Madison had bet on chaos. But chaos needs a map to get anywhere. And I was the map. I closed the laptop and poured myself another coffee. The city lights blinked through my blinds like signals from some distant war zone. This wasn't revenge. This was reconnaissance. The text came in at 11:42 p.m. They're blaming you for the client churn. I hadn't spoken to anyone from the company in days. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized it instantly. Chloe, an intern from last summer. Sharp, observant, underestimated. She'd shadowed me during her final week, asking the kind of questions most interns never bothered with. Where the contracts lived, how we structured dev sprints, why a company like ours needed redundancies no one ever saw. I stared at the message. Then another followed. Said you left back doors. That you sabotaged the system out of spite. I didn't respond. Not yet. I just sat there in the dark listening to the low hum of my refrigerator and the distant sounds of sirens 6 floors down. I hadn't touched a single line of code since I walked out of that glass tower. I hadn't opened a config file, logged into the CMS, or changed a single password. But it didn't matter. In panic, truth gets rewritten. Facts blur, and when things fall apart, people like Madison don't take responsibility. They assign it. By morning, Chloe sent screenshots, internal Slack threads, with Madison tagging Sterling and 2 mid-level managers. The words, Ray, left a broken foundation, jumped out first. Then, I'm drafting a legacy sabotage report. We need to protect the company narrative. Narrative, not truth, not facts. Narrative. Apparently, the TikTok consultant's viral launch strategy had derailed a $4.8 million campaign. Wrong time zone on the live stream. The CEO's name misspelled in the opening slide, and a logo version from 5 years ago pulled off Google Images. I had run that client's account for 7 years without a single escalation. Now they were gone, and I was the scapegoat. I walked into my office and shut the door, pulled down the blinds, sat at the desk I'd had since my 30s. Same chair, same coffee ring on the wood, but everything felt smaller. Not because I'd lost something, but because I knew what was about to begin. I plugged in an old hard drive. There was a folder I hadn't opened in 5 years. It was called Insurance. Simple. Unassuming. But inside it lived a truth so clear, so detailed, so utterly bulletproof that anyone trying to rewrite the past would regret it. Screen recordings of Zoom meetings where I outlined launch protocols, step-by-step walkthroughs on how to deploy media packages for time zone-sensitive clients. Emails time-stamped with transfer instructions. Handoff notes signed digitally by junior staff confirming receipt and comprehension. Meeting transcriptions. QA logs. Even the CMS versioning logs showing the exact moment I removed myself from admin access. I wasn't just covered. I was sealed, airlocked, and fireproofed. Still, I didn't post anything. Didn't leak to the press. Didn't run to LinkedIn with some passive-aggressive, time-to-turn-the-page post. That's not how people like me move. I printed. One by one, I printed every document. Every screenshot. Every key email. I highlighted parts. Numbered pages. Sorted by date. Cross-referenced names. I wasn't building a defense. I was building a record. Madison wanted a narrative. I'd give her a chronology. That night, I put everything into a plain black binder. No label. No flourish. Just truth in ink. Spine stitched shut. Pages heavy with facts that couldn't be erased by hashtags or ring lights. As I zipped it into my laptop bag, I imagined her sitting in some boardroom again, spinning new versions of history to anyone who'd listen. I imagined Sterling pacing behind her, muttering about algorithmic context collapse, while the walls slowly caved in around them. I didn't need to shout. I just needed to be ready. The meeting invite was buried in an old calendar system I helped implement in 2008 before cloud-based scheduling became trendy and bloated with integrations no one actually needed. Most of the newer hires didn't even know it existed. But the board did. So did legal. And Madison? She never touched it. Probably didn't know we had anything predating Google Suite. I titled the meeting Vendor Alignment Sync, Legacy Systems. Just vague enough to slide past a glance, but structured enough to land on executive radar. I sent it to exactly 6 people. 2 top clients who'd gone radio silent after the failed launch. The former CEO, her father, who still held emeritus influence over the company, the board chairman, outside legal counsel, and myself. I booked it in the main conference room, the same one with the glitchy live stream equipment. Fitting, the day of the meeting, I wore the same navy suit I'd worn during our first $1 million pitch. Not for nostalgia, for symmetry. When I stepped into the room 5 minutes early, the air was already different. Tighter, less oxygen, more static. The clients were on time, polite but unreadable. Her father arrived moments later, looking 10 years older than he had just 6 months ago. The board chair nodded at me like a man arriving for a funeral he didn't want to attend. When she finally walked in, she was mid-laugh. Sterling right behind her, carrying a tablet like it was a royal decree. She stopped when she saw who was seated. Eyes scanned the room. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. The smile froze. Sterling's jaw tightened. "Apologies," she said, straightening her jacket. "We weren't, looped into this invite?" I gestured to the open seat across from me. "It's on the legacy system. Thought it would be good to align everyone before Q4 planning." She blinked. "We've pivoted most of the vendor meetings to a more agile cadence." "I'm aware," I said. "This one's different." The room went still. I opened the black binder and slid copies to everyone present. Page 1. The campaign failure timeline. Page 2. My final system documentation, signed and dated. Page 3 through 12. Screenshots of Slack threads. Annotated. I didn't speak fast. I didn't dramatize. I just walked them through the sequence like a project post-mortem. Sterling tried to interrupt. I kept going. Madison folded her arms and leaned back, forcing a smile. "Ray, with all due respect, this feels retaliatory. The launch didn't fail because of missing documentation. It failed because the internal structure was compromised from the beginning. Frankly, we're still cleaning up the mess you left." I nodded, then clicked the mouse connected to the projector. A Zoom window opened. Chloe's face filled the screen. "Hi, everyone," she said, clear and composed. "I interned under Mr. Locke. I received all documentation for the transition and can confirm the CMS structure was complete and fully operational when I left." Madison's eyes narrowed. "This isn't protocol." "No," I said. "It's truth." I clicked again. A screen recording played on the monitor. Madison in a staff meeting, pacing, animated. Her voice filled the room. "We don't need board approval. They're old white money fossils who'll die before they figure out what TikTok is. We're steering this thing now full throttle." The silence that followed was so deep you could hear the hum of the power strip under the table. Her father didn't speak. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. He just stared at her, long and hard, like a man who'd realized his house had been broken into while he was still living inside it. The board chair looked at Legal. Legal started scribbling. Madison opened her mouth, but there was nothing left to say. Not yet. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Madison's nameplate was gone from the executive suite. 12 hours. That's all it took. HR issued a formal internal notice citing pending investigation into ethics violations and conduct unbecoming of a C-level executive. I wasn't copied on the email, but I got a screenshot. Word travels fast when people smell blood in the water. Her father stepped back in, temporarily, though everyone knew it wasn't temporary. You could see it in the stiffness of his gait, the way he didn't bother with small talk when he passed staff in the hallway. He was back in control. But this wasn't a comeback. It was containment. Madison didn't return my calls, not that I made any. By Friday, I was summoned. The same boardroom, same chair, but this time, no clients. No projection screens, just legal counsel at the far end, a folder in front of him, and a junior HR rep with a trembling pen. Her father sat across from me, tired, alert, mouth flat. The lawyer slid the folder toward me. "We'd like to move forward with a clean separation, Mr. Locke. In light of recent events, the board acknowledges your long-standing service and the unfortunate transition." He didn't look up as he spoke, probably rehearsed the line twice in the mirror. "We're prepared to offer a severance package reflecting your years of tenure, along with a formal statement of recognition for your foundational role in the company's infrastructure. The NDA is standard. You understand." I opened the folder. Mid-7 figures. Enough to disappear, retire, rebuild. Hell, enough to forget. I closed it, slid it back across the table. No deal. They didn't respond at first. Maybe they thought I was negotiating. I wasn't. Instead, I reached into my own folder, pulled out a crisp resignation letter printed on ivory stock. Below it, a 14-page summary of operational malpractice, leadership negligence, and strategic mismanagement under Madison's tenure. Every statement supported by attachments, every attachment verified. This, I said, laying it on the table, is suitable for public record. I won't be signing an NDA. The HR rep blinked. Her pen hovered, then dropped. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Locke, if you release this externally. I haven't. Yet. The room stayed frozen for a long, beautiful moment. Her father didn't say a word, just stared at the documents like they were landmines, one by one, all armed. Do what you have to do, I said. So will I. I left without another word. No handshake. 3 days later, the story broke. Front page of the business section. CEO's daughter, ousted after scandal, nepotism, and client exodus. It spread like fire. By noon, industry LinkedIn feeds were wall-to-wall with takes, quotes, and carefully worded condolences. By evening, trade forums had surfaced Sterling's resume and torn it apart. No real consulting experience, no accredited certifications, just hashtags, angles, and buzzwords. He vanished overnight. Madison's name dropped off every board she'd been on. Speaking engagements canceled. The clients who had stayed began issuing their own quiet statements, distancing themselves. No lawsuits yet, but plenty of quiet exits. I didn't celebrate. I just watched. There's a kind of justice colder than prison bars. It doesn't come with sirens or applause. It comes in silence. Reputation, dismantled. Power, revoked. Legacy, erased. And me? I sat in my car one last time outside the building. Same parking space I'd used for over a decade. The windows were reflective now, corporate branding campaign plastered across them. Disrupt everything. I sipped my black coffee, watched the lights blink on inside, watched a new receptionist buzz someone through the front entrance. The company would survive, maybe not forever, maybe not intact, but long enough to rebrand and pretend this chapter never happened. That's fine. I wasn't after a job. I was after truth. She called me a FAX. Turns out I was the original, and originals can't be deleted.